there's a good chance you're dealing with a middleman, like me, when you get your medicines. That's because PBMs and insurers are often the same company. We even own big chain pharmacies and are buying your doctor's office. We decide what medicines you can get, where you get them, and how much you pay. It's a win-win. For me.
When middlemen own it all, you lose. Visit phrma.org/middlemen to learn more. Paid for by Pharma.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Business. How can you free up your team from time-consuming office tasks? Amazon Business empowers leaders to not only streamline purchasing, but better support their teams so they can focus on strategy and growth. Free up your teams and focus on your future. Learn more about the technology, insights, and support available at amazonbusiness.com.
This is Optimal Work Daily. 4 Common Mistakes Made by the Self-Employed by Michelle Schroeder-Gardner of MakingSenseOfSense.com. I've been fully self-employed for almost a year now, side hustled for 3 years, and I've learned a lot over this time period. No, I'm definitely not an expert, but I do know a little bit about owning businesses and running them since that's all I did when I had my day job as a business analyst. As a quick summary, in my old day job, some of my responsibilities included conducting interviews to learn more about a company and how they operated, analyzing any legal and business agreements, reviewing and/or compiling financial documents, including tax returns, financial reports, etc., and so on. When I had this position, I saw some really amazing companies. I saw many companies where the owners completely started from scratch and built multi-million-dollar companies which were extremely successful. However, I also saw many companies that made some horrible mistakes. These companies operated at losses each and every year, and I just don't know how they did it. Even though I run a fairly simple business, all I need is a laptop and internet to work, I'm starting to understand more and more about what these business owners went through in order to get to where they currently are. I've also made my own fair share of mistakes, and I know no one is perfect. Hopefully, though, you can avoid some mistakes. Here are 4 common mistakes made by the self-employed. 1. Not being organized. This is a very common mistake made by the self-employed. I'm guilty of this one too. I make this mistake all the time, but I am trying to improve. When you have your own business, you really need to work on being as organized as you possibly can. You need to make sure to keep your personal and business finances separate, receipts organized, papers organized, and pretty much everything you use for when you do your taxes the following year needs to be prepped and organized. Keeping everything organized will help everything go much more smoothly when you eventually need the item. It's easy to let each little thing slide, and all of a sudden, your disorganization will take over your life. It might become impossible to find anything, and you might even lose important documents. 2. Thinking being self-employed will be easy. Now, this one isn't necessarily too common, but I do think it's a common way that people who are not self-employed think. I recently read an article about someone who quit their job and entered the self-employment world because they wanted to do something easier in life. Sadly, they found out the truth was the exact opposite. Being self-employed isn't a never-ending vacation. This is something too many people think. Just because you work for yourself and/or at home, it doesn't mean that life is automatically easier. You will need a plan for your business, research about how you will actually make an income, organize your finances, handle the legal side of owning a business, manage to not let your business take over your life, provide services, sell products, find health insurance, save for retirement, and so on. Oh yeah, and don't forget about taxes. 3. Not having an emergency fund. I have seen too many people enter the self-employment life only to have a few bad months and completely give up. I understand that running a business can be hard, as I mentioned earlier, but I do think having an emergency fund can be a lifesaver in many situations. Different people like to have a different amount in their emergency fund. I have a full year of expenses just in case everything completely tanks or if something major happens to either of us or our home. Keep in mind that we do have a $12,000 deductible before we can actually use our health insurance, so we keep our emergency fund extra inflated with a year's worth of expenses because of that as well. An emergency fund can really help if you have a bad month, if something goes wrong with your business plan, or if you have some major expenses coming up. Instead of completely giving up on your dream, your emergency fund can help you power through any bad months so that you don't have to quit, unless you truly want to, of course. And 4, spending a crazy amount of money. Luckily, my business is very cheap to run. I don't need much in order to make an income. All I really need is my laptop and internet. Everything else I pay for are really just little luxuries to make everything a little bit easier. When I first started my hustles, I ran it much more cheaply than I run it now. I wanted to save as much money as I possibly could. This is not how everyone runs their business, though. I have seen some business owners start their business by spending too much money on items that they probably do not need. Yes, some items are a need, but others can probably wait a little bit until you know you have a viable business plan. Also, some spend a lot of money on their business just so they can write the expenses off on their tax return. Let me say this, just because you get to write it off does not make the item free. You still have to pay for the item. You just listened to the post titled 4 Common Mistakes Made by the Self-Employed by Schroeder-Gardner of MakingSenseOfSense.com.
Spring savings are in the air and at Ross, where they have savings on all the brands you love. From the latest fashion to outdoor decor and even pet supplies, savings are in every aisle. Go to Ross and save 20 to 60% off other retailers' prices on your favorite spring finds.
You're the owner of a small business, which means you're also the tech guy, and HR, and personal assistant, and head honcho, and intern. You could use another pair of hands, like the experts you'll find at Verizon Small Business Days, April 21st through 27th. Get a free tech check, special deals, and more. Call 1-800-483-4428 or visit verizon.com/smallbusiness to book your appointment. Verizon Business.
And thank you to Michelle, who created Making Sense of Sense to keep track of her financial progress, help readers improve their finances, and help her own personal finances. One example, due to this, she was able to pay off $38,000 in student loans in 7 months. She lived in an RV touring North America and now lives on a sailboat. She and her husband sold their house and became full-time travelers. And like many of the authors on our shows, she went from being in debt to financially free and documents the journey on her blog. She publishes monthly income updates and shares how she earns over $100,000 a month online. She's pretty open about it, so you can check that out. Again, her site is MakingSenseOfSense.com, and a little bit of a play on words there. All right, that's going to do it for today. I hope you've had a great one, and I will be back here with you tomorrow where your optimal life awaits.